Leah Sphinx was in despair. At the very least they would not be able to decipher how this energy absorption ability of the Mayans worked. For the second and third rounds, they were defeated despite their best abilities. The long-distance combat abilities of the Mayans was not just idle boasting. However, so far, besides the unique characteristic of their mech, they did not show much in terms of technique. But this did not mean that there was none, rather it was because Leah Sphinx simply did not make the Mayans to exert their full strength at all. The Mayans were very indifferent. In the fourth round, Leah Sphinx had already reached a desperate state. Their leader, Beal, came up. As a veteran, powerful country, they could not accept such humiliation. No matter what, he would want to win this round. They had already discussed that there were no other ways, and they could only try to charge to the front of the Mayan as fast as possible, as a close combat was their only chance. Beal chose the assassin-type mech of Leah Sphinx, floating shadow type 5 originally. Beal was good at warrior-type mech, but evidently, in this type of battle, the mobility of warrior-type mech would be inadequate. He was just going to put his all into the fight. For the Mayan side, their team leader, Varus, also finally appeared. This was a Mayan who was slightly tall. His skin was spotlessly white with the glow of the color of precious jade. It was lustrous and sparkling, which showed that his life force was extremely strong and blooming, as when the life of a Mayan came to an end, the glow would completely dim down. It could be seen that in the Maya's team, they respected their team leader a lot with the expressions on their faces when he went up. Usually, the Mayans did not show much expressions and thus these expressions were even more rare to see. Varus himself did not express any feeling about his opponent, and chose his own mech. The name that the Mayans gave it was the Heavenly Crystal King. The two mecha appeared in the arena. Having advanced to this stage of the battle, the people of Leah Sphinx already had no way out. At the instant, when the referee sounded the gunshot, Beal dashed out with his full strength. The tactics were clear. Beal was a player who had electric attributes for his ability x. The forward motion of his mech showcased his unique skill, electric polygonal steps. This was a move which utilized quick and erratic movements to confuse the opponents. Regardless of long-distance attacks or close combat, it was effective at dodging all of it. It was a super trump card. However, the team leader of Maya was quiet and motionless. He had no intention to launch a long-distance suppression at all. Could it be that the Mayans had even resolved their weakness in close combat? Everyone had this question, but Beal had no time to take all that into consideration. The tyrannical electric polygonal steps enabled his floating shadow type 5 to look like a flash of lightning, so it was very difficult to grasp the trajectory of his attacks or movement. The beam saber was unsheathed, it was a full-blown attack. When a person is confronted with the specter of death, he would fight to live. Following a loud roar, the distance between Beal and his bright opponent was down to just 5 meters. At this moment, Varus Heavenly Crystal King extended his hand and gave a light push. A ripple appeared, a lattice of light appeared in between the two mecha. There was no time at all for Beal to respond before the mech passed through the light screen. To be more exact, it was broken up into countless small pieces. Exterminated. After many years of silence, the Mayans had finally made skillful moves. Far or near, it was unfathomable in all ranges. Or so to say, including the people of Atlantis, Maya, Ghana, etc. The civilizations of all these species who were similar to mankind had started to rise up. It was just by chance that they all chose the same opportunity without prior consultation. The year was totally not being ruled by mankind, it was ruled by all other races. Even if it was Aslan and Arbiter, they were also not likely to have much of an advantage against such opponents. The Mayans won victoriously and advanced into the quarter-finals, while the Leah Sphinx's team was defeated badly with a score of 0-4. For this battle, Leah Sphinx had 2 deaths and 2 serious injuries. They were beaten till they were not able to retaliate at all. The faces of Leah Sphinx's generals were as white as paper as this was an extreme tragedy to them. For the IG, it not only tested the strength of the new generation or the performance of mecha, but more importantly, it was to seize the opportunity to strike a blow on your opponent, and to demonstrate your military force, in order to strive for greater power and status within the Milky Way Alliance. After several ups and downs, this was the current Milky Way Alliance, and for those countries who had been defeated during the IG, they would still more or less be affected. Leah Sphinx had been on a slight decline in recent years. It was unlikely that their opponents would let them off easily with this defeat. In the afternoon, the Aslan Empire's team was against the Immortal Barbarian Stars team. This game was no suspense at all. It was for sure that Aslan would win 4-0, the question was just that how were they going to win? The opponent from before had demonstrated their military force in another match, so Aslan would demonstrate their might for sure. However, no one would have thought that the first one to make his appearance would be Sword Magician Oz, who was part of the twin Gemini of the Aslan's empire. Even though Oz did appear earlier, he seemed extra carefree, and he won easily. At this moment, him appearing as the first player was probably going to wreck the momentum. On the Immortal Barbarian Stars side, after their discussion, they finally made their prudent choice of sending Ella. It was not a conflicting pair. Everyone knew the importance of the first round. Once the opponent's momentum had been halted, anything would be possible. However, if their own momentum was halted, they would likely suffer the following rounds. Ella had risen up the fastest in this period of time. The reason for this was unclear. It was like she had suddenly been enlightened after playing a game with someone. She had almost reached a state of perfection with her jungle scamper. The goal of this round was very clear: to follow and delay the mech of Sword Magician Oz. As long as she could hold him back, let's not talk about whether she would have an opportunity. She would first blunt the opponent's momentum, and it would be impossible for the opponent to determine the outcome of the battle in just one hit. Ella, Jungle Scamper. Oz, Sword Shield Rose 3. The Sword Shield Rose was a very common warrior-type mech of Aslan. There was nothing wrong with Oz choosing this common mech, but would the mobility of this mech be able to catch up with the Jungle Scamper? There was indeed sufficient space for movement in the current battlefield. Facing Oz, Ella obviously did not need to bother much about her reputation, she just needed to run as far as she needed to. The two mecha appeared, and both were rumbling. It was evident they both were well prepared and were just waiting for the gunshot by the referee to start taking action. Ella had an electrical javelin in her hand. Her state of mind was calm. She wanted this kind of harmony, that regardless who her opponent was, she was only focused on the electrical javelin in her hand. Oz's smile was getting more and more exuberant. He had just heard a rumor that was pretty interesting. It seemed like someone had managed to pass through the S-rank resurrection round. S-rank, it was only heard of as a legend, but unexpectedly, there was still such a person. Not knowing why, Oz felt that he was going to boil over with excitement. It would definitely be interesting to fight against such a person. It was clear that Oz did not even bother with his opponent. The gunshot sounded, and unexpectedly, both the mecha were rushing towards their opponent at the same time. In an instant, both players advanced 50 meters. This was already the optimal attack distance for the Jungle Scamper. The beast-type mech stood up instantly. The electrical javelin was fully charged. Ella took a deep breath, her eyes suddenly shut, and she launched an attack with her electrical javelin. However, at this moment, Oz did not dodge the attack. The beam saber was unsheathed in an instant. It was a quick draw. A sword flashed out in a single breath. Was he blind? There was still around 40 meters between them. As the beam saber flashed, a red ray of light arced out. Buzz! The electrical javelin brushed against the shoulder of Sword Shield Rose, and Oz only slightly leaned to one side. Just as everyone thought it was time for the Jungle Scamper to retreat, the Jungle Scamper indeed transformed into a beast type and started retreating. But, God, what was going on? The way the Jungle Scamper was moving was like it was being possessed. It was slowly crawling, and Oz had already arrived. One swat by the sword and the Jungle Scamper fell down onto the ground helplessly. Out of all the powerful teams, Aslan was probably the most humane. If the sword had sliced through, Ella would have surely died. Aslan's victory, totally unfathomable, there was no solution at all. The disparity was as huge as a gulf, so much so that nobody knew about this new capability of Aslan's mech, or about Oz's ability X. Such ability had never, ever been heard of before. The Immortal Barbarian Star was in absolute silence. Very soon they lost 3 games in a row. It was gap which they were unable to close, as the people of Aslan reproduced the previous scene. These individuals had no flaws at all. The solar system against the Darkness Empire. It was finally time for the match. Countless people had been waiting for this match. The performances of Wang Zheng, Lear, and Achilles had indeed caught everyone's attention, especially with the circulation of IG nowadays. Apparently, the resurrection round, which Wang Zheng experienced, was not a C or D rank. It was the legendary S rank resurrection round, and his performance with the golden wheel was an even more superb work of art. It had defeated Vincent, who was the pride of Manalasuo. This young talent was awesome. What exactly was Wang Zheng's level? Had the solar system really fostered a true talent, or was it just a flash in the pan? This round would be a very good test for it. Strength was a thing that was pretty hard to say. It did not mean that you would be capable as long as you had a strong foundation. To be truly formidable, you had to face all sorts of challenges, some might even be very weird. The Darkness Empire would indeed prove to be one of them. For those who were led by Slauberg Banda and belonged to the Darkness Empire, they too were also thriving with ambitions. They had already defeated their old enemy in one go and were unstoppable. It should be even clearer that the Solar System Federation's team was not their well-matched opponent. No one knew where so many people had come from, but the large viewing hall suddenly seemed a little squeezy. There was a sudden increase in the number of older generals, and they evidently had not come for the Darkness Empire, but for the Solar System Federation. Nobody would be able to ignore the place of origin for mankind. Even if after all these years the Solar System Federation's team had become weaker, the Solar System Federation was still one of the 10 permanent member states. And if the Solar System Federation rose up, their influence would be even greater than that of any other country. This was the cultural core of mankind. If one was of mankind, one would never ever be able to forget their own root. Slauberg Banda was also observing his opponent. He had also received the news, even though it was not very exact, but the idea mentioned was very clear. To defeat Wang Zheng in this round, there was no need to fight face-on with him, he only needed to obtain the final victory. Did that mean to completely ignore his presence? Slauberg was dissatisfied. Given his strength, this was the first time his superiors had disregarded him like this. However, it was too bad that the military had no direct jurisdiction against him, as he was the successor of the Banda family. Atlantis, Aslan, Arbiter, and Maya, all these powerful teams and their team members were present. It was obvious that their attention was completely different. They were all chatting zestfully, not knowing how the solar system team would be dealing with the Darkness Empire. Both parties drew lots for the battle. For the first round, the Darkness Empire would be up first. First battle. The player Darkness Empire sent was Banda's cousin, Xiaofeng Banda. He was the genius scout of the Empire, and Slauberg's right-hand man. For the pioneer battle, it was of no doubt that the Solar System Federation would either send Lear or Achilles. This was the safest choice, as even though Wang Zheng liked to give surprises, it was not possible to play with fire at this time. This previous time, Achilles had gone up for the first battle, so this round was handed over to Lear. Lear appeared. Lear's choice was the unbounded skychains, as usual. Xiaofeng Banda's choice was the ace mech of the Darkness Empire. From the Shadow Charm series, Shadow Charm Reaper. It was a light assassin type mech and a typical Reaper type, and it was no doubt an excellent choice to be used for special surprise attacks. Both sides were descendants of aristocratic families. Presently, the superiority of Banda was possibly slightly higher, and in his eyes, Lear was nothing more than a loser, but this loser actually was especially fond of acting like a pretentious prick. He really thought that the Earth was still like the Earth in the past. Xiaofeng looked over to Slauberg, and Slauberg nodded his head lightly. Xiaofeng understood, and a smile emerged at the corner of his mouth. It was to abuse his opponent to death. Looking at the functionality of the mecha, both sides had their own unique characteristics. The people of the Darkness Empire especially had special affinity with assassin mecha. This was particularly true for the children of the Banda family. The result would probably depend on the ability X of the two, as up till now the ability X of both sides were still unknown. But for this round, they would likely have to use it. The battles between assassin-type mecha with high agility were the most dangerous. The party with better skills would absolutely control the situation. However, in Lear's eyes, everyone who was not from Earth were like floating clouds or slaves. The weapon of the Shadow Charm Reaper was a unique type of two-sided reaping sickle. With attack and defense integrated as one, this was the favorite mech of the Darkness Empire, and it could very well restrain all those knives and swords. Once the gunshot was sounded, Xiao Feng immediately attacked. The speed of the Shadow Charm Reaper was really fast. Such swift speed was also the unique characteristic of this type of mech. It could not be so easily judged as compared to ordinary mecha, and the swift speed also meant that it could also maneuver quickly. The titanium sword of Lear was still hanging down casually. The Shadow Charm Reaper had already arrived, and the titanium sword was suddenly thrown outwards. The two mecha entered a high-speed battle. In an instant, sparks were flying everywhere. The Banda family of the Darkness Empire was also known as a family of assassins. With regards to the research and development of assassin-type mecha, they had invested their hard-earned capital and effort to develop both the mech and the pilot's performance and skills. However, against Lear, no advantage seemed to be obtained. The unbounded sky chains with a sword in each hand looked absolutely domineering and tyrannical. Yet every attack was very steady. Attack and defense were integrated as one. During attacks, it struck as fast as lightning, and during defense, it was as steady as a rock. But Lear's way of thinking was something rare. He was meticulous and neglected no detail. He did not intend to kill in one hit. On the contrary, one would want to kill in one hit, because more often than not, you would be giving your opponent the opportunity to kill you in one hit. Everyone, please pay more attention. Lear is giving us a chance to examine the sequence of movements of the Darkness Empire, Achilles said. He was the one who understood Lear the most. After all, having competed for so many years, with Lear's character, he was not someone who would be willing to do useless work. However, after the Solar System Federation had won against Manalasuo, their advantage had disappeared. The opponents definitely had already done thorough research on them, and once they were being targeted, they would realize that it would no longer be that easy for them in battles. It was important to adequately understand the movements of the opponent, and for the Darkness Empire, there was no doubt that their training was standardized, hence their movements would almost be identical. Bang, bang, bang. Facing the onslaught attacks by the Shadow Charm Reaper, the unbounded sky chains was unexpectedly steady and calm. It made people unsure of whether this was a warrior-type mech or an assassin-type mech, as it was sometimes fast and sometimes slow. Very soon, Xiao Feng Banda was able to sense the intention of his opponent. He was trying to gain insight on his moves. Boom! The Shadow Charm Reaper suddenly let out an ear-piercing sound. It immediately released a large number of frantic attacks. It looked like ghosts were surrounding the unbounded sky chains. It was the Shadow Charm Reaper's specialty, the Shadow Charm Tornado attack. Making use of the energy of the swift movement of the Shadow Charm Reaper, together with the extremely fast ability X, the ring-shaped area of effect attack allowed the two-sided reaping sickle to unleash its power. In an instant, sparks were flying everywhere, and the unbounded sky chains was completely suppressed. However, the unbounded sky chains stubbornly defended meticulously against each attack without any neglect to detail. One sword after another was used to parry without the slightest bit of disorder. There was a type of momentum that was as sturdy as a boulder. It seemed like no one had ever seen Lear being anxious. This was the momentum of someone wanting to win. Once the violent attack of the Shadow Charm Reaper showed no effect, it would be Lear's chance to counterattack next. Everyone could see that the sequence of movements for attacks for the Darkness Empire relied mainly on speed. It was the best to act defensively rather than attack to deal with them. Once the offensive power of the opponent weakened, it would be their chance. However, at this moment, the speed of the Shadow Charm Reaper became even faster. The ability X of Xiao Feng Banda fully erupted, extreme speed encirclement. There were many types of speed-based ability X's, however, there were even more categories if you subdivided them up. Some allowed for straight-line acceleration, some allowed others to zip in opposing directions quickly, and for Xiao Feng Banda, his ability was circular speeding, also known as arc speeding. When he moved within an arc, not only would there be no decrease in speed, but there would even be an increase in speed. Once it started a violent attack, it would not be able to stop. And for the people of the Darkness Empire, they did not accept losers. The shadow of the Shadow Charm Reaper had completely enveloped the unbounded sky chains. The frantic attack was happening in all directions, just like a monster who wanted to devour the unbounded sky chains. So long as he could endure it, he would endure it. Just at this moment, Slauberg, who was outside the battlefield, let out a cold sneer, and the pupils of his eyes suddenly disappeared. Even though the opponent's attacks were frantic, he did not break through Lear's defense. However, everything before everyone's eyes disappeared all of a sudden. There was darkness everywhere. All of a sudden, the mecha disappeared, the whole arena disappeared. Even people also disappeared. The boundless darkness was going to gobble up both your physical body and your soul, and only fear would remain. Ability X. Dark Canopy. There was a trace of confidence within Slauberg's smile. As long as he was around, even trash could become an unrivaled warrior. The range of his Dark Canopy abilities was really wide. So long as the enemy was being targeted by his dark imprint, he would be able to launch it in an instant. And once you were being enveloped by the Dark Canopy, not only would you completely lose your field of vision, your ability X would also be confined, and only fear would remain in you. The closer the distance, the stronger the effects. Even though this time the distance was slightly far, to accomplish it for even 1 second, it would have sufficed. This was truly an unfathomable ability of a leader. Rumbled. In a split second, the darkness disappeared. Both mecha were separated by an explosion. They retreated by 10 over meters and laid motionless. And immediately after, both mecha started giving off sparks and exploded. The first aid staff came pouring in, and they dragged the 2 pilots out of their mecha promptly. Slauberg also froze for a moment. Under such situation, he actually was still able to strike back. Lear's mind was indeed extraordinarily tough. The slow-motion replay appeared. There were 2 screens, and the other screen showed the dark energy descending. At the most crucial moment of the fight, the unbounded Skychain's mech was suddenly enveloped by a black sphere. No matter how skillful Lear was, he would not have expected this. And the most ruthless part was that his ability X was also confined in that split second, and the opponent had been waiting for this moment all along. Despite completely losing his field of vision and ability X, Lear was still able to make an attack. His basic skills were astonishing. He executed a quick and violent horizontal movement even though it was still a little slow, and he did not manage to avoid the hit on his chest, but his attack that followed immediately also caused the Shadow Charm Reaper to suffer a big loss. Xiaofeng Ban that definitely did not expect that anyone would still be able to react in that manner and make such a movement when being attacked by the Dark Canopy. The result was that the unbounded Skychains suffered 6 hits, and the Shadow Charm also suffered 3 sword attacks and 1 kick. Both mecha lost their combat ability at the same time. Everyone was looking at Slauberg. It was evident that everyone had felt the ripple from his ability X. It was just that no one would have expected that he would still be able to launch his ability X even though he was separated by such a great distance. One must know that the Dark Canopy of Slauberg had already been listed under the important abilities to take note of. The people of the immortal fairy star, their old enemies, had been giving away their information for free everywhere. The ability of the Dark Canopy was indeed scary. To lose your field of vision in an instant, this was not an attack on the mech, but a direct attack on the pilot. Without the ability to defend, and also this unfathomable ability, together with the effect of fear on the heart and soul, unless one had an extremely strong mind, they would definitely be affected. During a battle between experts, a little mistake would be deadly. The scariest thing was that it was able to confine the ability X of the opponent, and the length of time of confinement was not clear. It was just that nobody would have expected that he could launch the Dark Canopy from such a great distance. What about in close distance? How long would his ability X be able to last? Suddenly, everyone was feeling a little regretful for the Solar System Federation. Even though Lear had encountered such a power, he was still able to make a counterattack and ended the round in a draw. This was simply unbelievable, and it could only be said that his mind was absolutely scary enough. Basically, he was not affected by fear, and during the time when his ability X was confined, he relied on his instinct to move horizontally, then he followed his senses to make the counterattack. This was definitely something that only an experienced soldier would be able to do. It was a move to exchange a life with another life. But what should one do next? This ability was not an ability that you could defend against just because you knew about it. On the contrary, the more you knew about it, the more terrifying it would be, because if you kept thinking about the opponent who was outside of the battlefield, Once you were distracted, you would be crushed. This also meant that for every fight, the solar system would have to face a situation of 1 against 2, and this included the Dark Prince, Slauberg Bantha. Both the pilots were injured. Little Bantha seemed extremely furious. Even a cooked duck could fly away. He really did not expect that a person enveloped by the dark canopy would still be able to make a counterattack. Lear's arm was all bloody. One of the broken fragments had hit his right arm. However, Lear's expression looked particularly gloomy and cold. The admiration of others to him was as worthless as trash. This time, he had given too much thought. He should not have given the opponent any chance, and should have killed him right away. Having a team was the most harmful. If there were not so many useless people, he would not have had to waste so much effort. Now the situation was not too encouraging. Achilles and the rest could not think of any solution. As long as Slauberg did not board a mech and charged into the battlefield, they were not breaking any rules. Looking at the proud expressions of the Darkness Empire, it seemed like they had expected this to happen. This type of ability was more terrifying the more one knew about it. No one could stop the Darkness Empire from advancing. Lear did not receive any in-depth treatment. He just sat down indifferently and looked at Wang Zheng and Achilles. It was clear that the Solar System Federation had encountered a difficult problem. They were not scared at all to face them directly. However, now the opponents that they would be facing were all going to possess 2 scary types of ability X. Perhaps Achilles and Wang Zheng would be able to win 2 rounds, but what would follow after that? Wang Zheng stood up and walked over to the front of the stage. Looking at the referee, he said, "The Solar System Federation is willing to carry out the team leader heavenly battle." Immediately, the whole audience was in uproar. The team leader heavenly battle was a very special choice for the IG. Basically, for so many years since IG started, nobody had chosen it. Regardless of whether the game was in its preliminary or final stages, it could still be used. As this was a choice of 1 player against the entire opponent's team, it was not just 5, but all 12 players. IG was a military battle, and it was not a choice to completely eliminate the strong. Hence that also meant giving a chance for a match for 10,000 enemies. So once the team leader heavenly battle was called for, the opponents would not be able to reject, but the opponent gained the power to kill their counterparts, and this also meant that regardless of life or death, they would be able to play unscrupulously. What Wang Zheng was doing was basically seeking death. "Wang Zheng, we have not reached a desperate end. There is no need to do this. We still have a chance." Achilles immediately tried to stop him. Lear was also stunned. 1 against 12. This was the type of crazy thing to throw away one's life that even he himself would definitely not do. Being the champion of IG was certainly something that he wanted, but to use your own life to exchange for it, it was definitely not worth it. This mental case. Wang Zheng did not waver. He merely looked over at the people of the Darkness Empire. They couldn't help but say that Wang Zheng had no choice. The world was so big, and experts had been coming forth in large numbers. This ability of Slauberg was really unfathomable. The referee was stunned for a moment. "Are you sure?" Wang Zheng gave a serious nod, and immediately the whole audience started to flare up. The first team leader heavenly battle in IG history had appeared. Was he going to carry his whole team forward on his own? The competition came to an emergency halt. For the first time in IG history, there was a team leader heavenly battle. Rather than calling it a heavenly battle, it felt more like a battle for one's life, as the person who called for it would not be able to surrender, and his life would be entirely controlled by the opponent. The committee was also having an emergency consultation. They were considering how the arrangement of this round of battle would be like. There was a timeout for 10 minutes. Let's not talk about the Darkness Empire. Even the Solar System Federation's side was having an intense debate. Most of the team members were holding on to their view of disagreeing, and unexpectedly, those who were disagreeing the most fiercely were people like Zhang Shan and Meng Tian, as Wang Zheng was absolutely seeking his death by doing this. "Wang Zheng, why are you even more impulsive than me? I have a solution. Isn't this just because the jerk's ability X could reach a further distance? I can take care of him. Later on, I will just charge over to fight him directly. Or when he uses his ability, I will go right across to beat him to death." Zhang Shan said furiously. Zhang Shan would rarely be so furious, as he admired Wang Zheng the most. No matter what, Wang Jung would always remain cool-headed. However, he had actually made such a decision today. Even if they lost, it would be alright because the solar system had come so far, so there was no need to risk his life. Don't be so childish. You think the people of the Darkness Empire are all dead? IG has never banned such an ability X, but if you act recklessly, we will be eliminated right away, Lear said coldly. In the past there was also this type of ability X, which had a wide range. One example would be the Healing Series ability X, which appeared in the previous year. It could provide assistance from afar, to enable their team members to constantly stay in the best condition. This type of ability was of no concern to the IG organizers, as according to the rules of the IG, so long as you did not appear in the battlefield, it was fine. As for disturbances, if it was so easy, Banda would not have been known as the Dark Prince. Damn you, the one who dares to take the risk now is not you. Aren't you always very capable? How come you only managed to score a draw? Zhang Shan shouted angrily. Lear was still very calm, as usual. A small smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. The Zhang Shan in front of him was too childish. Encountering a sudden problem, under a circumstance of being totally unprepared, it was already fairly difficult for Lear to be able to score a draw to end the round. If it was Zhang Shan, the opponent probably would not even have had to reach such that point and would have finished Zhang Shan off straight away. But Lear clearly did not want to start an argument. He really wanted to know how strong Wang Jung really was, and with Wang Jung's character of taking the initiative to volunteer himself, even if it was a last resort, perhaps there would still be a certain chance of success. At this time, Vargas, the Lieutenant General of the Darkness Empire, immediately called together his team members. However, the team members of the Darkness Empire seemed particularly relaxed. They did not expect that Wang Jung would be driven to such a desperate action, to just throw away his own life. Victory was in sight, and this was also considered a type of battle won without any fighting. Vargas looked at everyone. They were indifferent and complacent, especially Slauberg. Everyone believed that they were surely going to win. However, the silence of Vargas still attracted the attention of his team members. They felt that the atmosphere was not right, and everyone quietened down. I will just tell you guys one thing. Wang Jung completed an S-rank mission during his resurrection round. It was something unprecedented in history. Due to the rules of the IG, I don't want to say much, however, let me just tell you guys one thing. He used the golden wheel and killed over 10,000 Zerg, and he also killed the queen worm, all on his own. Would the 12 of you had been able to accomplish it together? Vargas said coldly, there is a common saying from the people of the earth. There is no limit in the universe. Knowledge is infinite. However strong you are, there is always someone stronger. If you guys are not going to be on full alert, we will surely lose this battle. In an instant, everyone's jaws dropped. The rumor was real? There was really such a monster, and it was that fellow? Slauberg gave a faint smile. Very good, brothers, you all heard it, finish him off, and we will be a super S-rank team. Follow me and I will lead you guys to win this world. Long live Banda. Vargas finally heaved a sigh of relief. He knew from Slauberg's expression that he was ready to hunt. After all, worms were not human. Regardless of who the Solar System Federation had met, they would have had the power for one battle. Unfortunately, they had run into the Darkness Empire, where the ability of Slauberg really was tantamount to cheating. This year, there were indeed too many geniuses who made their appearance, and only the most prudent one would be able to emerge as the champion. As the battlefield for the advancement in the competition was being prepared, it was evident that compared to the training ground below, the one for this round was still slightly smaller and still required a little bit of time. Wang Jung's choice completely taught a lesson to all the teams who were present. Let's not talk about anything else, but this fellow really has the guts, and he really appeals to my liking. Aurora, if we ever face him, you must give him over to me, Oz said all of a sudden. Aurora gave a faint smile. Why, you think he really stands a chance to win? Even if he was not scared of the darkness, facing the 12 experts of the Darkness Empire, there would only be death and no life. With Slauberg's character, he would definitely not let him off. Aslan had been paying close attention to Slauberg for a long while, especially to his ability, and it was unexpected that it turned out to be even more radical than the information they had received. The most powerful ability in this era was the ability to overlay, to be able to amplify and to help your surrounding team members. Usually, there would only be team battles after entering the quarter-finals, but, unexpectedly, this was seen in the top 16. Sigiali did not know whether she should be a big mouth, but seeing this scene, she still sent a message to Princess Aina. However, there was no sign of activity at all from the news she sent. Perhaps she had overthought. At best her royal princess highness had liked him for his talent, so how could she possibly? Arbiter had not started battling, but they were equally relaxed. No one would have doubted whether Arbiter could have entered the finals, except for that one immortal man. Olivius, who always looked cold and bored, finally opened his eyes. His cold blood had suddenly warmed up a little, and he had not felt this way in a long, long time. He had not come to the IG to become some bullshit champion, that was just a political game. He had actually come here to battle, searching for an opponent that would be able to hold him back. He was born to fight, but up till now, it had been really, really disappointing. All he had met with were a bunch of idiots who were weak and believed themselves as infallible. But this Wang Jun was pretty interesting. If the rumors were true, he was qualified to fight a battle with him. The people on Atlanta's side were also whispering to one another, "What do you think that person is going to use?" With his understanding of the Golden Wheel, perhaps there will be hope. But how should I say this? It really depends on whether he will be able to withstand the dark canopy. That is really not easy to deal with. Even the Golden Wheel would be quite inadequate, as the mobility is still lacking. One must know that he would be facing a group of night assassins. I am afraid that maybe really only our Atlantean mecha would be able to deal with them. It is a pity that he can't use them. He deserves praise for his courage, but he looks pretty confident, perhaps there will be a miracle. The people of Atlantis were the least gossipy, but a decision like this also made them very curious. On the contrary, the Royal Prince Highness, who was always an inquisitive baby, was being indifferent. He was in high spirits, anticipating the battle. What would be used? Yi Zissou was very worried, and Yan Xiaoshu was also rubbing his hands. Should be possible, definitely possible. Our leader would not use his own life and joke about it. But Yan Xiaoshu's forehead was filled with sweat. The more he watched this IG, the more uncertain it got, and the more it did not seem like a place where ordinary people would stay. In the face of all these monsters, Wang Jun would have to face them 1 against 12. This sight was practically like seeing ghosts alive. But Yan Xiaoshu knew clearly in his heart that if Wang Jun did not go up, they would stand no chance at all because the abilities of their opponents were all too abnormal. Wang Jun would definitely obtain the championship. No one knew better than Yan Xiaoshu, as this was a promise with Aina. The time taken to prepare for the venue of the heavenly battle was slightly long. Lieutenant General Akerlef was trying hard to find a suitable venue for this battle. It could be seen that this general of the Milky Way Alliance did not want Wang Jun to die here, especially not to the grubby hands of the Darkness Empire. All these years, the Darkness Empire had not been law-abiding, and if they were unrivaled in the IG, it might even lead to more troubles. He was also uncertain about a battle like this. Would the Golden Wheel be able to create another miracle? Within a short period of time, almost everyone knew that the capability of Wang Jun's Golden Wheel was not the same as during his battle that time with Vincent. It was stronger. At the same time, people were not worms, especially when against a team. Slauberg had trained his team members to be absolutely ruthless, and all these people were carefully selected by the Banda family. They were definitely not going to be unable to cooperate with each other. Vincent was sitting quietly in the corner, just waiting. He did not know what the limits of the Golden Wheel were, but he really could not think of any way to deal with such an opponent. To be honest, if it was him fighting the battle, he felt that he would stand no chance at all. Perhaps one-on-one there would still be hope, but it was 1 against 12, and it would be like a complete fantasy. Could it be that he would choose to run away, then destroy them one by one? However, this did not seem likely as the opponent would definitely choose Scout, and nobody knew how long Slauberg's dark canopy could last. If it was just 10 over seconds, there might still be a chance to endure it through, but what if it wasn't? In the end, the venue was confirmed and the training ground was opened fully. There were jungles 500 meters away and part of the arena. Whether Wang Jun could run away into it would all depend on his fate. After all, it was Wang Jun who called for a heavenly battle, so there was no reason for the IG to make things easier for him. If it was the Golden Wheel against a group of Dark Scouts, there would be no chance at all. After all, they were people, not worms. Suddenly, Vincent detected a faint aroma. He turned his head and was petrified. This. Even though he was from Manalasuo, he similarly also found the girl before him very familiar. The first princess of the Aslan's empire, Aina, with a group of military officers behind her. Why was she here? Aina's arrival caused a brief commotion, but it quickly quietened down. It was reportedly said that the royal princess Highness had heard about the first ever heavenly battle in the IG and had specially come down to watch the battle of the brave warrior. At the same time, she also came for Aslan's team, thus, naturally, Aina was seated amongst the Aslan seats. However, from the beginning to the end, her gaze had never left Wang Zheng. Wang Zheng also saw it, and she knew. But Wang Zheng had been carrying a smile on his face. Was he so confident about this? Many times, the result was only known after the act had been done. After all, he had not encountered the dark canopy before. But at this moment, he had a strong feeling towards Bonehead. He had cursed at him before more than 1,000,000 times, but not today. It was because of his inhumane training that he had such courage when he was faced with a decision like this. Sijiali was seated at the side of the princess. They had just finished greeting each other, but Sijiali was utterly stunned. Even though the princess acted as though it was very coincidental, Sijiali still saw the sweat beads on the snow-white neck of Aina. It was not a coincidental thing that she had rushed over. If she wanted to come, she would have come yesterday. Aslan had already finished competing. Moreover, with Aslan's strength, they would surely enter the semi-finals. If they were not able to achieve that, this group of Aslanians would have no face left. Slauberg led his 11 team members onto the stage and looked at Wang Zheng. Even though I am your opponent, I would still like to commend you on your silly courage. Anyway, one more thing that I would still like to tell you. My dark canopy can last for 5 minutes without stopping. Slauberg was smiling very brightly and was also very proud. This was to put an end to Wang Zheng's idea of stalling for time. Without a strength like this, how would he have dared to aspire to become the King of Darkness? After advancing to the semi-finals, his dark canopy ability would be able to reach the ultimate level. Aslan, Atlantis, and even that blockhead from Arbiter, they were all weak and nothing more. The Darkness Empire's team were not unreasonable. They all chose the scout mech, Shadow Charm Reaper. A scene of 12 Shadow Charm mecha was indeed too spectacular. The darkness caused people to tremble with fear. To be targeted by 12 Grim Reapers in the dark, no one would even want or dare to think about such a feeling. However, no one cared about this. Everyone knew the Darkness Empire would be like this. The important thing was what exactly was Wang Zheng going to choose. Golden Wheel, Hercules, or another mech from Earth? Whatever it would be, it still felt lacking. Wang Zheng did not give everyone much time to be confused. His mech had been confirmed. Wind God. Yan Xiaoshu clenched his fist tightly. It was definitely the Wind God. The one and only Wind God. Ability X or what, he did not understand. However, once the Wind God entered the jungle area, with Wang Zheng operating it, it would absolutely be unrivaled. Yi Zixu was biting her lip. She was very, very worried. She was worried that her capability was too inadequate. If only the Wind God could be more powerful and nimble, Wang Zheng would have a greater chance of winning. However, there had been continuously no progress on improving it, and she could not help at all and could only watch. The Wind God against 12 Shadow Charm Reapers. But this choice of mech frightened a considerable portion of the people. Meng Ao's heart almost fell out. What was this situation? It was not the Golden Wheel. How was he going to fight without the Golden Wheel? The whole audience was whispering to one another. It was said that Wang Zheng was most expert at the Golden Wheel. He had created a miracle by completing his resurrection round by using this Golden Wheel, and at the same time, he also defeated Manalasuo. Unless, could it be that he was also an expert at other mecha? One must know that even an ace pilot would only have focused on one mech. Even though an ace could operate other mecha, their formidability would be reduced significantly. Vincent was completely stunned there. He had no doubt that Wang Zheng would choose the Golden Wheel, but it turned out that Wang Zheng had chosen the Wind God? What was this sorcery? No one had ever heard of this. The Wind God was a new mech. Even though it had caused a din for a while, the Milky Way alliance was too huge, so most people would not pay attention to such news, and furthermore, it had not yet been mass-produced. The people of Atlantis who had witnessed Wang Zheng's performance before were whispering to one another. It was obvious that they could not understand how using such a grotesquely shaped mech would allow Wang Zheng to win, as at least with the Golden Wheel, there was still some hope. However, one thing was for sure. The Wind God was also a scout-type mecha, so there would be an advantage in its movement speed. The Golden Wheel was too slow, so it would certainly be surrounded by the opponents before it even entered the jungle. And once surrounded, it would be an easy target, like catching a turtle in a jar. The mecha of both parties entered the battlefield. It was like 12 fierce wolves eyeing one little Red Riding Hood. Once the gunshot was sounded, they would all swarm towards it. "Don't let him run away," Banda said coldly. It seemed like there was no need to use his ability X. One thing which everyone had mistaken. The reason why his subordinates could enter the IG was not due to them depending on his ability X, it was because each of them was an outstanding warrior. The engines of the mecha of the Darkness Empire were all being forcefully maneuvered. Looking at the Wind God, it was also storing up power, and they knew that he was thinking of running away. The distance between both sides was around 200 meters. With the speed of the Shadow Charm Reaper, they would be able to catch up with the odd mech of their opponent in at most 5 minutes. Slauberg had also heard before this one thing, even though he was not too bothered about it. It was said that this work of a gorgeous female mech designer had a little unique characteristic. One gunshot, and the noise of mecha penetrated the whole sky. 12 Shadow Charm Reapers were frantically moving over to surround the opponent in an arc formation. However, the movement of the Wind God shocked everyone. Not only did Wang Zheng not run towards the jungle, instead, he charged towards his opponents. Everyone present was stunned, included those veteran generals. All their jaws dropped too. They had seen performances that exceeded all expectations, but they had not seen someone using his own life to do it. Did he really think his opponents were made of paper? The team members of the Darkness Empire were also shocked, but very soon they were charging over with even higher speed. It was as though he was belittling them and they would absolutely trample him to death. Slauberg let out a sneer from the corner of his mouth. He was going to finish off his opponent in an unforgettable manner. Many years in the future, looking back, if Godwood could give Slauberg a chance to start over, he definitely would not have participated in this major competition. This was a nightmare that had been disturbing the Prince of Darkness for 10 over years and had never gone away. The mecha of both sides rapidly closed to 50 meters. The two-sided reaping sickles were emitting cold glints of light. They were going to rip apart the idiot before them. Wang Zheng was really excited. He had not expected the sudden appearance of Aina. This sight would directly result in the tragedy of the Darkness Empire. For a warrior like Wang Zheng, what would happen once his adrenaline was strengthened by many times? Whoosh! Damn it! What is this thing? One of the shadow charms suddenly realized there was something on its body. However, a ray of shining, bright light came down from the sky. Only a loud sound was heard, followed by the sound of an explosion. Activate your energy shields. Buzz buzz buzz. The remaining 11 all opened their energy shields. 4 of them came over, attempting to surround him, while the 7 others were aiming their lasers. Breaking one apart in one blow. The Wind God showed no sign of stopping, exerting power in both feet, with its engine roaring, and with an adept move, it soared up into the sky. It became a target in an instant in midair. At the same, it shot out its magnetic source. The Wind God suddenly fled into the sky like an aurora, while the lasers behind him struck empty air. Once it landed, the Wind God charged towards the nearest Shadow Charm Reaper and used its power to attack. Facing the attack of Wind God, the warrior of the Darkness Empire had no fear at all. Its two-sided Reaper hook was thrown over immediately. However, the Wind God, who appeared to be almost within reach, suddenly disappeared before his eyes. It looked as though the mech had practically warped. One of the Shadow Charm Reapers by the side was directly kicked. In an instant, the titanium blade of the Wind God started an onslaught of powerful attacks. Boom! It had indeed wasted Wang Zheng's time a little. The energy shield was destroyed, but before Wang Zheng could do anything else, this Shadow Charm Reaper was already finished off by the people of the Darkness Empire. Pushing away his human shield, the wind god suddenly fled out and was completely unafraid of the hail of lasers. "Idiots, put away your lasers and get rid of him," Slauberg roared, darkness canopy. Buzz. Instantly, everything fell into absolute darkness. Even the support players of Slauberg would also sense that the sunlight had disappeared, and the surroundings became dimmed. However, the difference was that for them, they were still able to see the target clearly. While for Wang Zheng's world, everything had disappeared. The darkness was boundless, and suddenly, the wind god came to a standstill. Everyone's hearts were clenched. This was the unfathomable darkness canopy of Slauberg. With a wave of Slauberg's hand, two shadow charms floated over quietly. The combination of the shadow charm reaper within the darkness canopy was simply unthinkable. Suddenly, the magnetic source of the wind god made an abrupt move, and it immediately attacked towards the one to its left. One kick and it hit, and at the same time, it soared into the air. Spinning its titanium blade in mid-air, it straightaway sliced off the head of the mech. And without stopping, with a forceful maneuver of the engine, it charged towards the one on the right immediately. The one on the right could barely react. This was the vanguard of the Darkness Empire, who possessed a strong horizontal movement type of ability. Looking at the wind god who was kicking towards it, there was not even a slightest amount of fear in him. After a loud roar, it crazily went all to try to collide against the wind god. However, the wind god, who was in mid-air, it shot out its magnetic source once again, inserting it into the ground. With the attraction of the dual magnetic fields, coupled with the engine control, the wind god made a curve in the empty sky to bypass the shadow charm reaper who was charging over. In a short while, it went over to the back and whoosh. It pierced through it from behind with its blade. The darkness continued to spread, but in a blink of an eye, only 8 out of the 12 team members of the Darkness Empire were left. Outside, Olivius suddenly stood up. That strong murderous spirit, he had felt it at last. He once thought that he was the only one in this world who had such power. This was something that only a monster who had crawled out of hell would have, to abandon everything they had as a human being. Fear. Wang Zheng had long forgotten what it meant. Bonehead said it before, that a super warrior needed no fear. For those who lived, they no longer had it. Darkness Canopy did not give him fear, but rather excitement. It completely ignited the negative feelings at the bottom of Wang Zheng's heart. The primordial regression technique was in full operation. Wang Zheng did not need to use his eyes at all. In his world, amid the darkness, each and every mech was as clear as flames. Boom, yet another mech was destroyed, the 5th one. The energy shield was destroyed, and after that, it was being attacked till death while it was still alive. And immediately after, Wang Zheng charged towards another one. As once it was hit by the magnetic source, there was completely no chance of escape, just like a corpse being fed on by maggots. Boom, a laser launched by Slauberg on the brink of a crisis hit the wind god. At the most critical moment, the Darkness Empire's team leader made the most accurate judgment. As wind god was seeking speed, it had not activated its energy shield. Buzz, a thin layer of shielding appeared on the surface of wind god. It had been burst open by that one laser shot. But the wind god was unharmed. It had only suffered a little bit of vibration. However, this delay gave the shadow charm reapers a chance. The reaping sickles were all sweeping towards the wind god at full strength. Now the wind god must definitely retreat. Otherwise, even if it was not hacked to death, it would be caught up in an entanglement. The people of the Dark Empire were also in a craze. Even if they had to hold on to the wind god and perish together, they would also absolutely not retreat. The wind god also did not retreat. It generated power with a forceful maneuver, and the ground beneath it split open, the mech launching forward just like a cannon firing it. Leaning landslide. Buzz, the energy shield vibrated violently, but was not broken. However, the pilot inside was already bleeding in their 7 apertures and had already been knocked out. The mech also staggered and fell to the ground. The 6th one. However, the wind god, who had done such a move, was totally not tired. It continued to walk slowly. In an instant, 6 magnetic sources flew out. Under the dark canopy, Slauberg's subordinates also had been affected to a certain extent. Their reactions would be slower than usual, and after Wang Zheng's magnetic sources flew out, everyone was shocked. But the wind god did not catch a magnetic source. Instead, it made a full frontal attack. Boom. However, just as Wang Zheng was going to succeed, a shadow charm reaper dropped from the sky in an instant and appeared unexpectedly on him. The main strength of the Darkness Empire's team, Garth. His ability X was a spiritual attack. Once struck by his ability X, the opponent would be distracted for 5 seconds. If the opponent was not careful, they would then lose track of where he went. Together with the Dark Canopy, he was an invincible assassin. However, facing this lunatic, he also used his full strength and clung firmly onto the wind god. In an instant, Slauberg led the other 4 of them, and they took out their lasers. Similarly, they were all scout-type mecha, and their power hardly differed. He just needed to endure for 2 more seconds and the wind god would be dead meat. For the glory of the Empire, long live the King of Darkness, Garth roared crazily. However, just as he finished his roar, his whole mech was overturned and smashed directly onto the ground. Boom, the titanium blade stuck right through it directly. Growl. Boom, the Shadow Charm Reaper was torn into 2 and thrown towards the other Reapers. The 7th one, the Mangetic Source was sent out, and the Wind God immediately followed. Slauberg's movement was the fastest, and he took aim at the Magnetic Source. At the same time as when the Wind God flung out the Magnetic Source, the laser was also launched. However, that thin layer of energy shield appeared once again, and it defended against the shot again just barely. Outside, Arbiter, Atlantis, or the Maya, regardless of whether they had finished competing or they had yet to compete, they were in absolute silence. This type of operation was unheard of, and this type of mech was also unheard of. Vincent had always felt that as long as he worked hard, there would come one day where he would be able to reach the realm where Wang Zheng was in, to be able to reach a perfection in controlling the Golden Wheel. However, what he did not expect was that the Golden Wheel was merely just one of the mecha in Wang Zheng's repertoire. If the Golden Wheel was Wang Zheng's very own bloodthirsty warrior, then this Wind God was Wang Zheng's very own death god. He was the Reaper within the darkness. It was truly unfathomable, and this was in a situation where his ability X was being confined. Suddenly, the darkness disappeared. The Dark Canopy ability ended, and everything returned back to normal under the sunlight. Unknowingly, Slauberg and the rest had already gathered together. The 5 mecha had actually cowered and pulled back together. And not far away was the Wind God, approaching step by step, with a sharp titanium blade. This was like recounting an immortal legend. Charge! Slauberg yelled, and the other 4 of his team members also clenched their teeth as they bellowed, "Long live the Empire," and charged towards the Wind God. At the side, a reaping sickle lashed out, surging with lighting power ability X. It possessed enough power to cause a serious paralysis effect if it hit. However, it completely missed the target. Boom. The Wind God pierced the mech right through from the bottom up in one swift movement at the crucial moment. It directly pierced through the neck of the Reaper. Flinging the mech away, it shot out its magnetic source, and then the Wind God disappeared once again. Boom boom boom, after finishing a set of attacks, the Wind God immediately scuttered over to his next target. Just like a monster, everyone was looking at the Shadow Charm Reaper, which was known as one of the top 10 scout-type mecha, going around in circles. Their pilots had originally crazily bragged and went on and on about their reaping sickles, claiming to be reapers. Yet, in this case, they just looked like lunatics talking to thin air and making fools of themselves. The energy shields of the 4 mecha all exploded. Without the protection of the energy shields, it was like they were being stripped naked. And facing against the Wind God, the Darkness Empire's Shadow Reapers started retreating. They no longer had any idea on how they should go about fighting anymore in the face of such an opponent. Whoosh, a magnetic source appeared in the middle of the 4 mecha, followed by the Wind God, just like a shadow that would follow the body. Fantastic 4-sided strike. In an instant, all 4 of mecha exploded at the same time. It was an insanely adept move of killing while flying in circles within just 1 second. Easy peasy. There were flames radiating all around, but the Wind God was still wearing that thin layer of energy around itself as it came out unhurriedly from the sea of flames. All of a sudden, from 1 against 12, it once again came down to 1 against 1. Slauberg gritted his teeth, but unknowingly, he had gritted his teeth too hard and was bleeding. His hands were also shaking. He wanted to control his mech, but he was unable to control it at all. Right from the moment when he was born, he was acclaimed as the genius of the Bantha family. Representing darkness, he could command darkness, and fear was his weapon. He used fear to make his opponents surrender, to make his opponents feel weak. However, now he was experiencing an emotion that he had never felt before: fear. The silver mech that was before his eyes kept increasing in size and became bigger and bigger. It was like being unable to resist the various gods. He was so negligible. The opponent could at any time kill his dreams and ambitions, his everything. No, it could not be like this. He was the king of darkness. He was the hope of mankind. He was the ruler. Saliva and tears were flowing out of Slauberg's eyes. He was almost going mad. However, in his world of darkness, the callous and ruthless Bigfoot of the wind god was advancing towards him, step by step. And he would be stomped to death straight, just like a cockroach. Boom! A blood-curdling scream came from the mech. Slauberg's Shadow Charm Reaper became gloomy. And at this moment, the distance of the wind god from the Shadow Charm Reaper was still at least 10 meters. The camera immediately cut in. Everyone was dumbstruck. The pupils of Slauberg's eyes enlarged infinitely, and there was saliva and snot overflowing. No one knew if he was dead or alive. But there was one thing which everyone could see, that he was filled with a deep fear inside him. If you were not able to enslave fear, then you would be enslaved by fear. It was an Ability X backlash. The Solar System Federation's team won the heavenly battle. Just that at this moment, there was not even a tiny bit of noise both inside and outside. Perhaps this was because the people remaining were all going to have to face the same problem. How were they going to deal with this monster who was known as Wang Zheng? This was not the first time that Wang Zheng had shocked the whole IG. He had stunned all the experts who were present, but it was just unacceptable because it was always so freakish every time. From the Hercules, to the Golden Wheel, and to the Wind God. His abilities spanned across the basic warrior type, the auxiliary type, and now the assassin type, and each of them had all left people flabbergasted. With this level of understanding of mecha, it would have been sufficient to make a name for yourself in the IG with just one mech. However, he had 3. And was this the end? Nobody knew. Suddenly, someone jumped onto the table. It was Zhang Shan. And immediately after, Yan Xiaoshu, who was in the delegation, also jumped straight up, and was flapping his arms and shrieking wildly. Following that, the rest of the people managed to react. The Solar System Federation had once again been brought back from the brink of death. They had defeated the Darkness Empire team. Everyone was shouting crazily. At this moment, there was no need to suppress it. It was a historic moment for the Solar System team as they were advancing closer to the quarter-finals. Initially, when the IG started, the Solar System was already on the decline, and they were used to being at the bottom rankings. Top 8. This seemed to be like a dream, but it was also not a dream. Meng Ao and the rest had been through great changes and had experienced many ups and downs to achieve their current positions. However, seeing a battle like this and achieving such a victory, they were also cheering madly like the rest, and they all rushed to the front to welcome the hero of the solar system. Compared to the celebratory mood of the solar system, the rest of the teams were still as quiet as before. Nobody would have expected for such an unfathomable person to emerge from the solar system team. If the defeat of Manalasuo was not enough to warn everyone to be on their guard, this battle let everyone know that if they would wanted to emerge as the champion, the solar system would be their rival, and that Wang Zheng was a barrier they would have to pass through. Wang Zheng looked slightly pale as he walked out of the mech. Humans were indeed different from worms. Even though the time of battle was not long, for every second, there was almost no chance to breathe. He had exerted his full strength at peak intensity. The primordial regression technique had reached its peak. If he had not entered the second level, he would have surely died during this battle. Zhang Shan was too excited, so excited that his tears were flowing out. He actually also did not know why, but his damn eyeballs were not listening to him. F***ck, he was too happy, and too relieved. If he had not been swayed by Wang Zheng to transfer into the mech department, he would not have known that guys could live like this. Growl, Zhang Shan, you pig, can you be more gentle? Zhang Runan could not help but scold as the guys were too boorish. Haha, never mind. Wang Zheng is an iron warrior. Who cares, just blow them off. Zhang Shan laughed heartily. It was like when he had gotten the first place for the first time for his examinations. From a distance, Aina wanted to rush over so much. The two of them were so close, so close. Meng Ao was still the one who was more experienced, knowing that what Wang Zheng needed the most now was to rest, instead of being watched and surrounded by people. Especially not when the eyeballs of those generals were still burning with anger. Meng Ao brought Wang Zheng away, while the rest stayed behind. After going through such huge battle, he obviously needed to rest and to undergo a checkup at the same time. This was only the top 16 competition. They had now proceeded on to the top 8. It was something that they would not even had dared to dream of in the past, but suddenly, they were actually looking forward to an even higher level. Due to observing such a glorious fight by Wang Zheng, it resulted in everyone losing interest for the next round. Arbiter Republic team against Maka Republic team, this was also a round with no suspense. The result was as expected, and Olivius did not go up. It was evident that he had completely no interest in a battle of such standards. So much so that halfway through the battle, Olivius had already left directly with the tactical analysts. He had totally paid no attention to the opponents. The team members of Maka Republic were upset, but there was nothing they could do. Perhaps they were secretly glad that Olivius had no interest in them. Otherwise, they would not know how many of them would be able to escape alive. Not only did Olivius leave, but not long after the start of the match, the major members of most of the battle teams and the generals also seemed like they had no interest to continue watching, that they had other things to do. Even though Aina was reluctant to leave, she had no other choice but to follow the Aslan team, who were also leaving. Those who left the meeting place were not really going to rest, and almost all the teams went to their own personal tactical practice rooms. The recent battle of Wang Zheng's was playing on the screen. As compared to the battle of Arbiter and Maka, which had no suspense at all, they would rather strike while the iron was still hot to study on the details of Wang Zheng's battle which just happened moments ago. The people of Aslan were sitting upright and still, and because of the presence of the royal princess highness, it also caused the warriors of Aslan to be even more excited. On the screen, the battle of the wind god was playing in slow motion. Even though they had already watched it once, for the people present, they could still sense the marvelous operations, consciousness, and physical strength. They were all of top-notch choice. The Dark Empire should have chosen 12 heavy armored mecha. In that case, the wind god would not have had any leeway to exhibit its skills. Vanguard Raphael laughed. He also loved to use scout mecha. To accomplish such a move, the person's body must have been supremely tough. Hee, it's something that can't be bought with money. If only we had known earlier. However, if they had really chosen heavy armored mecha, then perhaps the golden wheel of Wang Zheng would have been able to show off its power. This could not be helpful. The toughest pilot to deal with was this kind of all-rounder who would choose different mecha to show off in accordance to the different battle situations. Do you guys think that the Dark Canopy ability failed, or would it be that the ability X of Wang Zheng was the ability to resist other ability X's? Aurora suddenly said. It was clear that in the eyes of the Aslanians, the team members of the Dark Empire were not regarded as their competitors at all. However, the opponent's ability X was also not that weak. And even under such overlapping attacks, Wang Zheng was still able to withstand it. One must know that to be able to withstand ability X, Wang Zheng's body and mental strength were undeniably resilient and strong. However, this result was still a little exaggerated. We just received news that Wang Zheng's ability X has ice attributes. Seeing that he still did not use his ability X at a crucial moment, it was most likely confined. Even after the Dark Canopy lost its effects, he still did not use it. Immediately, the Aslan team members were quiet. Did that mean that Wang Zheng still had not utilized his full strength? Aina was still in all smiles. As a citizen of Aslan, as Aslan's princess, the people before her were all fighting for her, but Aina still could not help but to be proud of Wang Zheng. Snow, the general said that Wang Zheng's ability X comes from the same origin as ours. It also has ice attributes, and the strength of the ability is roughly C rank. The Ice-Cold Empire was also analyzing. Snow Lee, the team leader of the Hail Cloud Alliance team, nicknamed Frozen Sunset, was absolutely one of the most exceedingly beautiful women in the IG. Oh, seems like that Wang Zheng is pretty faded with us. The gaze of Snow Lee was twinkling with a wondrous radiance. The team members around her all looked at each other in dismay. Could it be that their Snow Queen team leader had gained an interest in that little fellow from Earth? To be able to attract the attention of the strong, one would have to be even stronger. With the same type of ability X's, Snow Lee was becoming increasingly interested. For the young generation in the Hail Cloud Alliance, no one was her well-matched competitor. However, it was different in the IG. There were experts everywhere over here, but it was very hard to find someone who she had feelings for. Can't help but to say that this battle of Wang Zheng had awakened many people's intention to fight. Olivius locked himself in a room. He was quietly admiring it. As to him, such a battle was considered art. All this while, he thought that only the people of Atlantis and Aslan would be able to give him a little fighting desire, but now there was one more. There was deep understanding of the mech, unthinkable movement, and his judgment was also pretty accurate. There was extreme confidence, and the speed and power exhibited had approached perfect control. It was hypothesized that he possessed a strength and speed type physical ability X which was D rank and above. Additionally, it was reported that his ability X was ice. This ability might be a little bit weaker, but nobody knew for sure. Actually, all this didn't matter. What really caught Olivia's attention was the murderous spirit. When the wind god ripped apart the shadow charm reaper, it was as if Olivius was looking at his own self. At that moment, Wang Zheng's soul was definitely roaring and yelling. However, regardless of the golden wheel or the wind god, they were not his opponents, unless Wang Zheng still had a higher level of strength. And according to the current situation, it seemed that there were still things to look forward to. Olivius had not much interest for the quarter-finals battles. It was like shooting a mosquito with an anti-aircraft gun. There was no thrill. However, for the semi-finals battles, Olivius felt that he could start warming up. He had initially planned to only start during the finals. There was no twist in Arbiter's battle. They had effortlessly eliminated the Maka team with a score of 4-0. Arbiter's strength lay not only in Olivius, but every one of them was a top-notch expert. The power of this tough empire was not developed over 1 or 2 years. However, this year seemed to be the point where they would show off their accumulated effort. Besides the solar system becoming famous from this battle, the name of the wind god mech also became even greater. That wonderful protection shield that appeared at the last moment broke all the usual trains of thought. Additionally, its supernatural movement also resolved a matter that had been gnawing at people's minds. Hence, Yi Zissou, who was the designer, became busy all of a sudden. After coming to Aslan, she had always been at the academy. Actually, not many people paid much attention to her. The short-lived enthusiasm of the media was like a drop of water in the ocean when it reached her. But IG was indeed a huge platform. She had received more than 10 invitations on that day, some of them wanting to exchange information, and some wanting to talk about collaboration. And even though other places did not pay much attention, in the core area of the military, there were many large corporations who were gaining great interest in this new type of mech made by OMG. It was not important whether or not it could be mass-produced. What was more important was the concept of the mech. This type of innovation was very important. Yi Zissou did not know whether Wang Zheng had purposely chosen that for her, but she really did not wish for Wang Zheng to take this risk. Fortunately, it was just a daunting experience without any mishaps, and everybody was happy. As for Wang Zheng, he was lying on his bed. He had just been through a round of examinations. There was no serious injury, but there were indeed many minor injuries at many places. His left rib had suffered the greatest impact. The bone had cracked, and was seriously affecting his body. The doctor's advice was for him to recuperate for at least 1 week after undergoing a thorough treatment. Meng Ao was having a big headache. It was slightly better than expected, but also not that great. Wang Zheng absolutely could not be absent, as they would not be able to afford that. However, if Wang Zheng took the risks and competed, it would be even more arduous for him towards the end. And if there was any unexpected accident, they would be even more unable to afford that. What's more, the teams of the other countries would definitely not give them any chance. Just as Meng Ao was in a dilemma, someone came to visit. It was already so late. Who could it be? Furthermore, not everyone was allowed to enter this place. Meng Ao's first reaction was that someone was planning to harm Wang Zheng. Wang Zheng had just been through an in-depth level of treatment and was in deep sleep. There was no need to doubt the medical technology of Aslan. Meng Ao had just prepared to rush out of the observation room, but he came to a stop. Was he seeing things? Meng Ao rubbed his eyes with all his might. Being advanced in age, he was now even having illusions? However, General Meng Ao realized that it was not an illusion very quickly. The girl before him was unexpectedly Aina, the first princess of the Aslan Empire. What was she here for? Even if Aslan wanted to harm Wang Zheng, there was also no need for them to send their princess to do it herself, right? Aina slowly walked towards Wang Zheng, then she leaned down, and immediately after, Meng Ao was shook. Recently his heart had been subjected to shocks over and over again. Accidents had been happening, but this time around the shock was also not any less than witnessing Wang Zheng killing all the wormholes on his own. The royal princess highness had actually kissed Wang Zheng. This fellow, he was really defying the natural order of things. Since when had he secretly picked up and won the heart of the princess? Was he that impressive? Aina was holding onto Wang Zheng's hand. Sitting beside him, there was an inexplicable happiness in her heart. All along she did not know how her other half would be like, until she met Wang Zheng. She once thought that maybe it would be a brave warrior, or a knight in shining armor, but when you actually met one, you would not be bothered about all these anymore, you would only want what was real. However, she had still underestimated her own eyesight. Being born in a royal family, Aina was not a sentimental or emotional person. She was equally firm, and she hoped that Wang Zheng would be able to accomplish his dream. As for her, she would definitely be supporting him, regardless of which step he took. Aina left after staying for just a while. There was so much tenderness and reluctance to part before she left that even Meng Ao could not help but to feel that Wang Zheng, and that fellow's luck with women, was a little outrageous. But looking at the appearance of things, the princess seemed to have come here secretly. Meng Ao suddenly realized a very big problem and woke up from his beautiful world. He looked around his surroundings, and secretly deleted the recording of what had happened earlier. He did not see anything, and he did not know anything. As the head of the delegation of the Solar System Federation, he only hoped for the team to achieve even better results. Fourth day of the top 8 selections, Hail Cloud Alliance team versus Astina Federation team. The military strength of both countries was not considered strong in the Milky Way Alliance, only middle-level standards. However, both sides produced a lot of geniuses, and their characteristics were very distinct. They were certainly the dazzling stars within the Milky Way Alliance. Astina Federation, a world of flames. Here they possessed an abundance of fiery resources. On their planet, they had unique plants of flames, and it made the planet, which was originally like hell, become extraordinarily beautiful. Over there were forests, which depended on flames to live, growing everywhere. They provided the citizens of the planet a rich source of unique minerals and power. This was a planet that never sleeps. Every few years, there would be the birth of several geniuses, and every generation was stronger than the generation before. In a world like this, the people were never lacking in passion. And at the 2E when Ability X was being discovered, there were many people who possessed various types of fire-related Ability X's who emerged from the people of Astina, and this also increased the national strength of Astina quite significantly. The same situation occurred at the Hail Cloud Alliance. However, in contrast to passion, this was a type of stability that would cause people to be marveled at. They produced in abundance and possessed warriors with Ice Attribute Ability X's. The people with Ice Attribute Ability X's from other places could not be compared to the Hail Cloud Alliance. Of course, the thing that the people of the Hail Cloud Alliance most enthusiastically discussed was that every 100 years, they would celebrate the Year of the Dancing Ice Dragon. Of all the people of Hail Cloud who were born in that year, there would be one person who would surely receive the blessings from the Dancing Ice Dragon. And this person would definitely be one of the leaders in the Hail Cloud Alliance, decided behind closed doors. So, for this year, the leader of the Hail Cloud Alliance team, Snowly, was one who had been blessed by the Ice Dragon, and this was her first IG. If the Astina team was fire, the Hail Cloud Alliance would be ice. This was a battle between fire and ice. In terms of momentum, the Astina team was more confident. The Astina team in the previous competition had very good results, and the majority of their main force was still in the lineup this year. This year, Astina would strive for improvements to advance into the semifinals. Bishop, their team leader, was certainly the key person of the entire team. The whole of Astina seemed to be burning. The nearer you were to them, the hotter you would feel. It looked like they were all ready. As for the Hail Cloud Alliance, their female team members really should not have participated in the IG. They should have participated in the beauty pageant of the Milky Way Alliance instead. It felt like it would have been easier for them to emerge as champions over there. The vibes they gave off touched the depth of one's soul, like ice mixing with water, calming, yet also beautiful. There were as many as 6 Hail Cloud female warriors, and it no doubt caused the Hail Cloud Alliance team to become the most eye-catching team among all IG teams. Their Hail Cloud uniforms were as white as snow, which enhanced their voluptuous figures. Their skins were fair and delicate, and their facial features when they were serious and non-smiling made them look goddess-like, pure, and refined. Their fairness was similar to what was seen with mankind, which differed from the Mayans, who were a little more alien. Privately, the Hail Cloud team was also being known as the Team of Goddesses. This had caused the few males in the team to be dejected and unhappy. Why couldn't people realize that they were also very handsome? It was clear that the IG was not lacking in handsome guys. Before Ability X had been discovered, there had been even more models and celebrities coming out from the Hail Cloud Alliance. As the team leaders drew lots, Astina's team leader, Bishop, was looking at the Hail Cloud Alliance's team leader passionately, giving her meaningful glances. Snow, I heard that one of your requirements when looking for a boyfriend is that he must be able to defeat you. Is that true? Fire and ice were not tolerable of each other. However, the relationship of Astina and the Hail Cloud Alliance had always been great, and they were countries with a strategic alliance. Snowly had a face that was as mesmerizing as the bright moon. Her bright and beautiful eyes were like black holes, with azure blue hair, and her naturally red lips were like Cupid's arrow. It was able to shoot through the unyielding front of men and pierce straight into their soft hearts. However, she was too cold. She was the #1 genius who was born in the year of Dancing Ice Dragon once every 100 years, and she was placed with high hopes from the moment she was born. At the age of 5, after her innate skill was revealed, she was recruited by her country and was subject to focused grooming. Intelligence and strength were the most important traits in the Hail Cloud Alliance. Looks were not essential. However, as it happened, the girl who was blessed by heavens in the year of the Dancing Ice Dragon was perfect. The gaze of Snow Lee was ice cold, a stark contrast from Bishop's passionate gaze. Bishop rubbed his nose. The passion of Astina would never die out. An ice-cold lady like this, even if you used a searchlight, you would not be able to find one like this at Astina. The women of Astina had too much initiative. If I defeat you, you and I will date, how's that? Snowly just drew her lot coldly, her team would start first. She turned around and returned to her team without saying a word. It's a deal then. Bishop was not in the least bit bothered, he was still talking aloud to himself. The Hail Cloud Alliance team was looking at their beloved team leader. Team leader, why didn't you blow off his head? Snow Lee was the gem of the Hail Cloud Alliance. How could they allow other nations to be lusting after her? Snow Lee only gave a faint smile, but everyone knew that she was already numb to such things. Team leader, let me go up first. Xu Dongxing's eyes were sharp like blades. Within the team, he was Snow Lee's most loyal subordinate. He loved Snow Lee, but not in the way where he would want to have her as his own. It was the kind of loyalty of a knight, where he would want to guard his goddess. Snow Lee took a quick look at Xu Dongxing. With an expression which was sharp like blades, he was in his best condition. She nodded her head and granted his request. Xu Dongxing stepped forward in big steps and made a swipe on the selection screen. With regards to which mech to use, he was already prepared for that. The mech slowly rose from the ground, the Frost Gazer. It was one of the most well-known mecha of Hail Cloud Alliance. It was a warrior type, with an outer layer of ice and snow. At first glance, one would have thought it was an ice sculpture and not a mech, but over here, it was very eye-catching. However, as the planet of Hail Cloud Alliance was always covered by ice and snow all year round, this was the best form of camouflage. Haha, team leader, it can't be that you really fell for those ice-cold ladies, right? The fiery Astina team were all laughing together. It was a norm for them to be teasing their team leader. However, jokes aside, for their team leader's commands, nobody would ever dare to discount his words. They would only buck up 200% of their energy to accomplish it. Bishop reached out his hand and gave a hard pat on Sha Li's shoulder. Don't you all think that it is a greater accomplishment to win the hearts of such ladies? Nope, I still feel more comfortable with women who are passionate. Childish ones, move aside. Sha Li, you're up first. You are crucial in driving the momentum of the match. Sha Li laughed, looking at Xu Dongxing from the other side. Fortunately, it is a guy. If it was a girl, and if she cried when I defeated her, my heart would ache, haha. He went forward to choose his mech, Corona Warrior 1, equipped with a warrior shield, coupled with a long, titanium saber. It combined both attack and defense in one sleek passage. Round 1 started. Bang bang bang. Immediately loud voices were coming from Astina's side. Headed by Bishop, the rest of the members were all beating their chests with their left hands. Astina, Astina, Astina. With over 10 people roaring, the momentum had formed something like a war situation. This was not a direct battle strength, but the roaring got Sha Li hyped up, and his skill level was clearly much better than during his usual training. The Corona warrior raised up his shield and saber and roared a declaration of war. Xu Dongsheng dealt with it calmly. The frost gazer was really like an ice sculpture from ancient times, standing tall and gazing at the fiery Corona warrior. Bang! The Corona warrior started charging forward. Xu Dongsheng reacted almost at the same time, and he was also charging forward. This was going to be a direct frontal collision. The roaring of Astina became a scene of yells everywhere. Kill him. The voices of passion seemed as if they wanted to scare away all the clouds in the sky. This was a battle, how could there be no shouts of killing? Sha Li suddenly jumped up. The Corona warrior was like a god of war descending. Shield blocks the storm. The warrior shield was held in front of the mech to defend against a strong collision. It was to bully the frost gazer, who had no shield. When facing a full frontal collision, one shield would be worth 10 knives. Boom! Both sides bumped into each other. The frost gazer suffered a small loss and staggered 2 steps backwards. However, Sha Li had not gained an advantage. Originally, after blocking with shield blocks the storm, it could be followed up with the stabbing of the titanium sword, but the moment of opportunity had been dispelled by the force of the impact of the collision with the frost gazer. Even though the opponent's mech looked shiny and was as fragile as ice, its strength was actually really strong. Both parties took a glance at each other. Sha Li released a loud roar and then once again launched an attack. With its shield in front and titanium sword at the back, and crossover footwork, the long, titanium sword went through an exaggerated curve. Swallow reversal. This was a skill that mimicked the motion of a swallow's tail in flight. The sword lashed downwards and then almost as quickly lashed upwards. Sha Li came from an ancient martial arts aristocratic family. It was said that his ancestors were immigrants from Earth, and this set of sword skills was a family secret which Sha Li had accidentally found beneath a box in a warehouse. Initially, he thought it was a children's picture storybook, but he did not expect that it would be a valuable asset that would grant him a breakthrough to distinguish himself from the others. The frost gazer suddenly paused and reacted quickly. The whole mech crouched down and curled up. At this point, the weapon in its hand was now sweeping across the ground towards the Corona warrior. The swallows returned into the piercing sky as Sha Li's blow missed. Sha Li pounded his shield on the ground and blocked the leg-cutting blow of the frost gazer. Among the loud sound of collisions, one could still hear the roaring voices coming from Astina's team. Kill him! Sha Li howled through the public frequency channel of the Corona warrior. The Corona warrior started emitting faint rays of red light. They were like raging flames that were burning. Ability X. The outer shell of the frost gazer mech became even more sparkling and crystal clear. There were snowflakes amidst the faint rays of white light. This was an ice attribute Ability X. Both sides were warrior types, so there was nothing fanciful, and once again they were having a full frontal face-to-face confrontation. The warrior shield in Sha Li's hand became thoroughly red. This was not simply a burn caused by fire attribute, it also possessed an additional special ability X, G Material Pulse. The G material was able to produce a type of reaction that could interfere with the ability X of the target. To put it simply, it would dissipate the opponent's energy if it collided with the shield. Boom! Xu Dongxing suffered a loss, and his mech flew backwards. While the opponent was pretty cocky, carrying his own blazing sword, he was showing off his aggressiveness and being provocative. A real man must prove himself, especially in front of the girls of his enemies. Not to mention that the feeling one got from the beautiful women of the Hail Cloud Alliance was something different. Burning away their happiness with fire was a true pleasure. The titanium saber of the Corona warrior was strangely reflecting cold rays in the sky. Swallow return. It was a strange type of attack which was executed so fast it could not be perceived. At the same time, the movement was extremely fluid, much like swallows returning to their nests. It was something automatic and natural. Even Xu Dongxing being stabbed to death had an aesthetic feel to it. Xu Dongxing's expression became even more grave and stern. He would not lose face in front of Snow Li. This was something that he would never allow. Suddenly, an ice pillar thrusted up from the ground. Ice dragon thrust. The rays of the sword dispersed. There were no nests the swallows could return to. Sha Li activated the shield of the Corona warrior. He jumped up and also immediately used the warrior shield in his hand and placed it horizontally onto the ground for defense. The energy contained within this individual warrior shield could defend against one attack of a high-energy missile. However, it was unable to defend against the piercing chilliness. At this moment, his opponent suddenly pierced through, and strong, freezing air enveloped the Corona warrior in an instant. The flames of the mech stopped swaying, and layer of snow-white crystals started appearing on the surface of the mech and inside. Sha Li's jaw dropped open. His whole body was also covered with crystals. The numbness was like being injected with anesthetic. Growl. His ability X was also frozen. His opponent had exceeded him by one whole level. Boom. The Corona warrior disappointingly toppled over. For a person with a C-rank ability X, it was obvious that such an effect could be produced. The rank was not even the same, and the vanguard of the Hail Cloud Alliance unexpectedly already possessed C-rank ice ability. This also meant that he possessed the ability to kill any pilot below rank C within a second with just one attack. This was not something Sha Li could compete against. For people of the same ability X rank, they would be looking at the unique characteristics of their abilities. However, if the ranks were different, it would lead to one side being crushed overwhelmingly. The dominance of Xu Dongxing resulted in subtle changes to the momentum of Astina. For the second and third rounds, they also lost to the Hail Cloud Alliance by a minuscule amount. Bishop was hopping mad, and was cursing and scolding around loudly, and after scolding, he roared to cheer for his team members once again. Astina, Astina, Astina. Actually, the battle of ice and water was based on the momentum. Whoever took control of the momentum of the battle would hold the advantage. They had been trashed by their opponent 0-3. This indeed went beyond everyone's expectations. Everyone had thought that this would be an evenly matched battle. Momentum. For the fourth round, they had to win this round without any hesitation, to display and bring back the momentum of Astina. That was the only way possible for them to turn their defeat into a victory. Bishop stood up and looked towards the opposite side. As expected, Snow Li had also stood up. At the moment, Bishop looked into Snow Li's eyes. His look was not as fiery as before, but rather, it was filled with heaviness. The heaviness of the burden where he must win. Without any hesitation, Bishop picked the Fire Dragon King, from the Super Series Mecha of Astina Federation. Snow Li's gaze was still cold. For her choice of mech, she chose the Frozen Sunset. This was also the mech that made her famous. Bishop vs Snow Li. Fire Dragon King vs Frozen Sunset. The strength of both of Astina team and Hail Cloud team were actually on par. If Bishop won, the momentum of Astina would rise, and it could be possible for them to win 4 rounds in a row to overturn the situation. Would Snow Li give this chance to the people of Astina? The Fire Dragon King of Bishop raised his sword horizontally towards the sky. At this moment, he suddenly sent out his declaration. You, woman, I want you for sure. Previously, he was flirting about, but this time around he was serious. If the compulsory prerequisite to woo Snow Li was to defeat her, he would be able to reap both the beauty and victory. Therefore, he had to win. Ever since he was born, Bishop had never had any goal he was not able to accomplish. Even if it was something really high, really big, really far, or even really impossible, if he set it as his goal, he would definitely be able to accomplish it. This time around, there was also no exception. Boom. Once both parties were engaged to fight hand in hand, it was an intensifying close-distance battle. Both parties did not hold back, and there was an outburst of ability X's straight after they came up. The whole body of the Fire Dragon King had flames bursting out from head to toe. The beam saber was also ignited in flames, and a flaming whip-like array of light extend out from the sharp end of the sword. Kiss by the tongue of flame. This was Bishop's ability X. Any material encountering his tongue of flame would all be molten and fall apart. But the frozen sunset mech was an exception. There was a layer of ice frost covering the top of the whole mech, and it allowed the tongue of flame that came out of the beam saber of the Fire Dragon King to strike on it any way it wanted to. However, it only left lines and lines of burn marks on it, and did not cause any serious damage to it. Snowly did not say a word, but that did not mean that she had no reaction. Woman, she was a beautiful woman, just because of this. Everyone who saw her talked about her, but everyone was just talking about her looks, her figure, rather than admiring her for her current position. It was as if she had become the IG team leader because she was beautiful. Nobody saw her hard work, no one saw how she had trained with all her might. They only saw her bright and neat outward appearance. Her man must not be one who only saw her looks first. There was no change to Snowly's expression, but white light was erupting from her eyes, and it was as cold as Wan's eye. The Fire Dragon King also erupted. A battle between ice and fire? Fire would always be the most powerful. For Bishop, all his muscles were bulging, and his sweat evaporated immediately after it appeared, due to the strong heat. Dragon Snake Delirious Dance. The tongue of flame from his beam saber became even thicker. The red flames also became purple in color, and its formidable power was 3 times stronger than before. Slap. The kiss by the tongue of flame swept across the shoulder of the frozen sunset. The mech, which was made of cold frost, immediately melted, and there was a long crack in the shoulder of the mech. Facing this power of a super mech, it was extremely fragile, like tofu. Bishop's eyes almost bulged out of their sockets. The G material had been continuously extracting his power, and he had long exceeded his limit. He could only last for at most 5 more seconds in this state, however, that would be enough for his win. The fire dragon continued to wave its tongue of flames. Then the engine erupted. With a frequency conversion, he was advancing forward at high speed. Just one more lash to the front and the victory would be his. The frozen sunset did not retreat. The eyes of Bishop were shooting flames, his victory was right before his eyes, and intense roars were already coming out of Astina's faction. Victory, Astina. Victory, Fire Dragon Bishop. Astina. Bishop roared. In an instant, the tongue of flames erupted again, and it became a fire dragon. At the last moment, it was boosted once again. It caused the ability that was originally able to last for 5 seconds to be reduced to 1 second. However, the formidable speed was boosted by 10 times. Regardless of whether the frozen sunset chose to retreat or remain still, there would only be one outcome. The mech would be swallowed by flames. As for whether Snowly would be seriously injured or whether her dainty looks would be destroyed, Bishop did not care about it at all, he just wanted to conquer her. As long as he conquered her, it would be fine. As for what his woman would become, was that important? The fire dragon in the sky looked as if it was alive. Like a coiled-up dragon, it uncoiled and lashed towards the frozen sunset. He was surely going to win. Icebound Nation. The voice of Snowly sounded for the first time. Her cold voice came out of the loudspeaker of her mech. It was obvious that she could not stand the roars and shouts of Astina from Bishop and was making a counterattack. Her cold voice was so sweet-sounding and ethereal that it seemed to be able to attract and hook away the souls of people. The voice of a beautiful woman. The voice of snow. The voice of ice. Buzz, there were a buzzing sound coming through, and it was ringing in everyone's ears. A ray of white light started spreading out from the body of the frozen sunset, spreading out in circles. Icebound, freezing, everything was covered with frost. The fire dragon in the sky froze. The purple flames also stopped swaying, and then it was smashed into pieces, and the bits and pieces of ice crystals were like snowflakes. Freeze the flames. Bishop's mouth was wide open. The piercing chilliness suddenly reached into the mech. In an instant, his entire self was wrapped in ice, and it formed a lump of ice. This was the power of the warriors who were prophesied and born in the year of the Ice Dragon Dance. And this also indicated the rise of the Hail Cloud Empire. The Hail Cloud Alliance team won with a score of 4-0. They had started to reveal their claws, and people would no longer dare to belittle the Hail Cloud Alliance just because they had 6 beautiful women in their team. The Icebound Nation ability which erupted from the frozen sunset that Snowly had used stemmed from an unfathomable ability X. It completely changed the surroundings. The rating of this ability was definitely middle C rank, or even higher. This hardly differed from the ice ability that Wang Zheng had used. It was not only Wang Zheng who was thirsting for the throne. And at this stage, every person with a C rank ability was extremely formidable. If you belittled them, the consequences might be so tragic that you would be having nightmares for the rest of your life. And there were already 2 who had emerged from the Hail Cloud Alliance, and they were also dashing towards the finals. The Solar System Federation had greatly provoked the desires to show off for the experts of big teams. During the afternoon time, the people of Atlantis, who had always been low profile, also could not endure anymore and showed off their skills. And their opponent, the Earthworm Federation team, had completely become a group of earthworms. Even though the strongest of the Atlanteans, their team leader and vice-team leader, did not go up, the endless stream of people demonstrating their ability to create mirages had immediately caused the Earthworm team to be stumped. 0-4, a complete defeat. The large disparity of this battle simply could not be shown, because from the beginning till to the end, the people of the Earthworm Federation did not even get to touch their opponent at all. This rhythm of things was like they were a kindergarten kid who was being hung up and beaten by fully grown adults. However, nobody would blame the Earthworm team, as this was because the people of Atlantis were really too strong. They were so relaxed, and it had always been a problem which perplexed mankind as to how they should respond and how should they deal with the people of Atlantis. However, for the IG this year, there were definitely not just 1 or 2 problems. The final top 8 had emerged. Team Atlantis Republic, Team Maya Empire, Team Aslan Empire, Team Solar System Federation, Team Arbiter Republic, Team Hail Cloud Alliance, Team Ghana, and Team Gemini. There was no rest. In the afternoon of that very day, the team leaders of each team drew lots to determine the battles for their team to advance into the semi-finals. However, since Wang Zheng was still recuperating, Lear, the vice-team leader of the Solar System Federation, drew the lot on his behalf. Everyone gathered together, and it could be said that every battle to get into the semi-finals would be a tough fight. Even though they were all experts, no matter how strong you were, there would always be someone stronger. There were a few countries which everyone would still wanted to do their best to avoid, such as Atlantis. Nobody would wish to face them in the quarter-finals, but there would still be someone who had to face them, and this would all depend on luck. The 8 representatives came on stage and everyone drew a number. The Solar System Federation was all looking at the number in Lear's hands. Off the stage, Aina had not left. As at this stage, as a princess, it was necessary for her to be present to cheer the Aslan team on. First half. Team Arbiter Republic vs Team Ghana, Team Aslan Empire vs Team Maya Empire. Second half. Team Solar System Federation vs Team Hail Cloud Alliance. Team Atlantis vs Team Gemini. When the results came out, the people of the Solar System Federation were happy yet worried. In short, this was considered a good draw, as the level of the Hail Cloud Alliance was around the same as the Solar System Federation. Compared to the other unpredictable abilities, ice abilities were somewhat more focused. However, even if the Solar System Federation team won against the Hail Cloud Alliance team, the one waiting for them would be the Atlantis team. However, the unluckiest one was undoubtedly Ao Ziwei from Team Gemini. Her luck was really bad. She had drawn the Atlantis team for the quarter-finals battle, and this was definitely a bad draw. However, Team Gemini seemed especially calm. The people of Gemini had never paid attention to their opponents, and Ao Ziwei also did not care too much about the mirage-creating abilities of the Atlanteans. Nevertheless, this was good news for Wang Zheng as he would be able to rest for a longer while. After the in-depth treatment, He had more or less recovered. However, this kind of recovery might be just a facade. Going by what the doctors had said, his vital energy had yet to recover fully, hence they would not advise him to engage in intense battles. So, at this stage it was obvious that it would be impossible for Wang Jung to fight. He could only try his best to recover as soon as possible. The primordial regression technique of Wang Jung was still rotating continuously. Generally speaking, the foundation of Wang Jung was still slightly weak. Even though he had gone through the transformation of the Rubik's Cube and there had been constant breakthroughs, compared to those warriors who had begun building their foundation from when they were 3 to 4 years old, there was certainly still a little disparity between them and Wang Jung. However, Wang Jung believed that the matter would depend on the individual. Following the huge battle, the primordial regression technique had clearly improved. It seemed like every time he had to wreck himself half dead, there would be improvements, and this method was truly quite masochistic. Student Wang's mentality was still pretty good. After receiving news on the results of the groups, Wang Jung felt indifferent, as regardless of who they were up against, there were no weak opponents in the top 8. And there would be no good outcome if they were to underestimate their enemies. Hail Cloud Alliance Team. The year of the Dancing Ice Dragon marked the first year of a new era and a new emperor's reign in the Hail Cloud Alliance. With the maturation of interstellar travel, there was the appearance of more and more religions. To quote a sentence of truth, the more you knew, the more insignificant you seemed. Somewhere in the universe lay a set of forces beyond science which would explain the mysteries of everything. This was very evident in the Hail Cloud Alliance, and Snowly was the chosen one of her people. When comparing hers to other, it did seem as though destiny favored her, as her strength simply could not be compared with that of an average person. She had definitely been blessed by the gods. Meanwhile, for the Solar System team, although the Hail Cloud Alliance had beaten Estina, it did not necessarily mean that they had gone all out. Thus, at this stage, Lear and Achilles had to pick up the banner. It was not always possible for them to just let Wang Jung fight alone with all his might. They did not have to think too far ahead. The first thing they had to do now was to get through the battle with the Hail Cloud Alliance. On the second day, after resting, even though Wang Jung was still unable to fight, he could still show up to observe the battle. The first round to enter the semi-finals, Arbiter against Ghana. These two teams were both badass, and they were also the most ruthless in their attacks amongst all the teams. As a result, they had also accumulated a large amount of hatred towards them. However, in the IG, almost everyone on those teams could be considered to be exceptionally notorious for being vicious. This was the style of Arbiter and Ghana. Their battle was definitely going to be very bloody, and it was clear that neither party would be giving way to the other. The rules of the quarter-finals were even tougher. It used a 5-point system. The team that scored 5 points first would be able to advance to the semifinals. For the victory of a 1v1 battle it would be 1 point, and for the victory of a team battle it would be 3 points. The team that scored 2 points first would be entitled to the choice of whether they would want to start a team battle or to continue on with 1v1s all the way until they scored 5 points. Team battles were absolutely necessary. The strength of a 1v1 could not be compared to the strength of a team. And in reality, in the army, team cooperation would bring about greater results than an individual hero. During the quarter-finals, almost all the delegates who were still at the military base were present. The battles that were going to take place next would be a representation of the highest level of successors at the current period, groomed by the various countries. The 3 malignant stars were already itching to get on with it, to kill the thing who was called Ollie something. They were the most capable and most fiendish. One individual like this on the team would have been enough, but instead there were 3. The bloodthirstiness of Ghana was even more intense than Arbiter. Adams walked to the front of the stage. Damn it, at such a crucial moment, Olivius was being late. What kind of situation was this? Referee, the time is already up. If Olivius does not show up, does that mean that you would judge us as the winning team? Adams teased. He was definitely not afraid of Olivius, and he just wanted to tease the people of the Arbiter. Bio, the vice team leader of Arbiter, stood up. Even if our team leader is not around, Arbiter can still easily wipe all of you out. For mankind, besides being better at their talking skills, there is nothing special about the rest of them. Just with you? Andrew's voice was a little sharp, and the pupils of his eyes had shrunk to thin lines. It was evident that this Naga was already having bloodthirsty impulses. To exterminate a freakish creature like you, I would only need one hand. What's the situation with Olivius? Are we going to start? Could it be he was scared away? The team members of Ghana are pretty cruel. It is said that they had to face life or death during their selection training. Olivius is also not that bad. Is he injured, or did something happen to him? He also left earlier during the previous battle and did not participate at all. I heard that his training was pretty brutal. It can't be that he injured himself during practice? Amid everyone's conversations, Olivius appeared, and in an instant, the whole scene quietened down. Olivius, I thought you guys were scared. Actually, there is no need to force yourself. I will give you a chance to surrender, Adams teased, but he knew very clearly in his heart that Olivius would never surrender. However, the more he was such a person, the more easily he would be provoked. Other people might not dare to provoke him, but that did not mean that he also did not dare to. Olivius did not look at all these people, he just swept a glance at the referee indifferently. I will choose the team leader heavenly battle. Cold wind blew across the whole audience. Was he joking? But the arbiter team members were very calm and collected, they just shook their heads grudgingly. The Ghanaians were truly stupid. They had infuriated the very person they should not have infuriated. Perhaps some people would lose their calm when they were infuriated, but the outcome of infuriating Olivius was definitely not going to be that. The reason Wang Jung had called for the team leader heavenly battle at that time was because there was no choice. It looked as though Olivius was trying to act cool by immediately calling for a heavenly battle at this crucial point of the quarterfinals. However, Adams agreed to it without any hesitation. Haha, Olivius is indeed a man who killed thousands. We, Team Ghana, will accept it, brothers, let's go prepare. Sir Olivius is going to teach us how to be a man. Everyone, we cannot disappoint him. All the people of Team Ghana were laughing, and laughing rather sinisterly. In Ghana, your reputation or oaths were all nonsensical stuff. The most practical things were to have power and money. And if Ghana emerged as the champion, they would be able to gain fiefs, slaves, and a considerable amount of wealth. These were the symbols of honor in Ghana. This was the most practical. Facing Arbiter, they were easy to fight against, but they were also a little worried. As for Adams, the reason why he was able to be the team leader was not just because he was a human being, but it was also because he was the most sinister type of human being. For human beings who would want to survive and adapt on Ghana, none of them would be normal. The competition started just like this. During all the discussions, the arbiter was arrogant. Wang Jung was the first to call for a heavenly battle, and in this case, Olivius was the first who dared to call for a heavenly battle in the quarterfinals. The difficulty level was even higher, as from the battles earlier, it could be seen that no one in Ghana was good to provoke. Olivius chose the comparatively classic mech of Arbiter, the Overlord. As for Ghana's side, they all chose what they were good at. Adams chose the Star of Ghana, Andrew chose Scorpion, while G. Joels chose the Steel Desolate Beast. The Ghanaians were truly planning to act ruthlessly. They would crush Olivius completely. The wind god of Wang Jung clearly possessed very strong mobility, and that was the deciding factor. However, the Overlord absolutely did not have the strong mobility of the wind god, and together with the lineup of Ghana, it was totally possible for them to kite him to death. The mecha appeared as usual. The Overlord appeared, the ordinary Overlord which had nothing special about it. How was it going to fight? Everyone was asking the same question in their minds. It was unimaginable. If one were to say the wind god was extraordinary, it was due to the fact that no one would have had expected that the wind god had such amazing capabilities. However, for the Overlord, it was just like that. Nobody was unclear about anything. Besides the one skyrocket cannon, what else could it do? Its defensive ability was still pretty good, but would it really be able to defend against all of the attacks from Ghana? Zhang Shan opened his mouth to speak. F***ck. Wang Jung, this Olivius is copying you. It feels like he is going to be struck by lightning. Even though he had wanted to do the same thing as Wang Jung, considering that he only had this one life, he could only give up on this idea. Wang Jung did not say anything. He was afraid that Olivius was not someone who would speak without thinking. However, he had witnessed the strength of the Ghanaians before. They had unique characteristics. They were able to attack and defend. Between Adams and his two friends, the three of them were fierce and tough. From a theoretical point of view, the steel wild beast was not the least bit weaker than the Overlord, and its flexibility to unleash a burst attack might even be above that of the Overlord. Looking at Arbiter's side, those people who were led by Bio were very calm, to the extent that this calmness even felt a little scary. The gunshot by the referee sounded. The battle had begun. The distance between the mecha of both parties was only 200 meters. Was the Overlord going to use the skyrocket cannon to run away? There was definitely a chance. Using this capability of the Overlord would definitely allow him to enter the forest ahead of time. Without waiting for Adam's command, all of the team members immediately went towards Olivia's side to surround him. The steel desolate beast was the fastest and at the point position. It was taking large steps forward. The Cockins were widely known for their brutish strength. Why would he even be worried of a single individual? The scorpion mech followed closely behind. The people of Naga liked the blood of the strong, and this prey was his. The rest of the mecha were around 7 to 8 meters behind, coming over to surround him. The Overlord had lost its best opportunity to run away. However, there was a type of solidifying atmosphere that was spreading. But in the audience, the delegation from Karagal was feeling indignant at the injustice. They had hoped that somebody would be able to take revenge on their behalf. When Ghana drew Arbiter, the happiest people were the delegation of the Karagal. Max was clenching his fists tight. His injuries were very serious and he had not yet recovered, yet his heart was even more seriously injured. Without considering Arbiter, no one else was as ruthless as them. But instead, Olivius, how could he belittle the Ghanaians so much? Max was very clear that this group of people was not only merciless, they also possessed formidable strength. Go to hell, you lowly human. The Cocken who was at the point position let out a thundering roar. The engine of the steel desolate beast rumbled. Was he going to execute a defensive move? The Cocken who had the strongest strength could easily tear a human to shreds. Why would there be a need to defend at all? Looking at the idiot far away who was raising his heavy shield, G-Joles would let everyone know that the greatest race in this universe were the people of Cocken. At this point, the steel desolate beast suddenly flew forward. This was the most vicious attack of the steel desolate beast, similar to the skyrocket cannon. However, it was even more violent than the skyrocket cannon of the Overlord. This move was called Unstoppable. Boom! The steel desolate beast activated its energy shield, with its spikes protruding all over its body. With intense speed and force, it charged towards the Overlord. It was also this very same collision that resulted in the bones of the Karagal member being smashed into pieces. Roar! There was a roar from hell, facing the full-strength attack of the steel desolate beast. But the Overlord was actually not dodging or avoiding the blow. Was he going to firmly resist it? Boom! Buzz! It was an explosion that shook the sky and the ground. All the other mecha who were charging forward slowed down. These two were lunatics. Broken stones were flying all around, however, when the smoke dispersed, everyone was stupefied. God! The heavy shield of the Overlord had fully withstood the impact of the steel desolate beast's attack. But the most crucial thing was not this, it was that the Overlord had not budged an inch. All of the power was obstinately blocked. The strong anti-shock forces exploded in the bodies of the two pilots, and what the Overlord had to withstand was 70% of it. G-Joel's mouth was filled with dark green liquid. His whole body was unable to exert any more strength. He could not believe that there would actually be such a lunatic who would act this way. At this moment, he suddenly felt a ray of shining white light approaching. The pike pierced directly through the cockpit of the wild steel beast, immediately crushing the Cocken. And for Olivius, this was like crushing an ant to death. The Overlord soared into the sky. This was the skyrocket cannon which the Overlord was best at. But what was Olivius thinking of doing? The Overlord descended from the sky. At this moment, all the mecha of the Ghanaians were moving away to break away from the turbulent area of the Overlord. This move was very potent, but it was a slow and silly move, as it had also caused the Overlord to be open to retaliation if he missed. In the viewing hall, all the team members of Arbiter suddenly grabbed onto their chairs collectively. Rumble, rumble, rumble. A gigantic mushroom-shaped cloud rose. Avalanche. A terrifying hurricane force swept over, carrying away everything. Woo woo woo. The ground exploded with wave after wave of blasts traveling outwards from the epicenter. The tempered glass of the viewing hall completely shattered, making everyone look like they had just experienced an earthquake. Only the people of Arbiter were prepared and were not shaken at all or in a complete mess. Only after quite some time did the shaking stop. The air and dust cleared little by little, and only one mech walked out of it. His name was Overlord. Team Ghana was completely wiped out, all were dead and no one was left. This was the immortal god of war, Olivius. The arrogant expressions of the delegation from Ghana ended spontaneously. They were all petrified. While the first to rejoice was not the people of Arbiter, but the delegation from Karagal. The wicked would suffer their own comeuppance. The impact of this round was even fiercer than Wang Zheng's. The skills demonstrated by the wind god were marvelous, but Olivius had decimated everyone with a single, decisive blow. There wasn't even anything left to watch or admire. Completely crushed. The sky rocket cannon combined together with the ability X of Olivius created his special move, Avalanche. This was definitely an ability X that was above C rank, but nobody knew exactly what type of ability it was. When the first aid staff entered the scene, they themselves also vomited. The pilots in the mecha had already been crushed into pieces. The mecha were also badly destroyed. The physical body was unable to withstand these kinds of shockwaves. Everyone finally understood the real strength of the strongest person in Arbiter. This was also why Arbiter had sworn to be the champion for this year. With a god-like person like Olivius, any team would have the same confidence. Who could stop such a person? Would Aslan be able to? Nobody knew. Olivius walked out calmly. His physical body seemed to be immortal. After withstanding such an impact, he actually looked like he did not feel anything at all, even when the mech was destroyed. What kind of material was his body made of? Arbiter's strength was indeed unfathomable. Just how were they able to nurture a warrior like this? The pressure had immediately shifted towards the people of Aslan. The first round of the quarter-finals ended in an unconventional way, and the vicious name of Olivius was forever immortalized. Facing the #1 most vicious person, it would be best for the rest of the people to keep a low profile, as undoubtedly the Ghanaians had violated Olivius' taboo. During the afternoon break, no one was discussing the battle between the Mayans and the Islanians that was about to happen later in the afternoon. They were actually still discussing how they would be able to restrain Olivius, as it was evident that no one could not think of any solution. F***CK, must this fellow be so vicious, so unfathomable? He clearly defies the natural order. Zhang Shan could not help but to bawl. It was a little too much. Lear took a glance at Zhang Shan coldly. Don't be frightened, he is not as strong as you all think. His ability X should be a C-rank shockwave type. It matched the sky rocket cannon, thus resulting in superpositioning of the shockwaves, amplifying the damage. The Ghanaian creature's brains only thought of trying their best to escape from the range of the sky rocket cannon. AMD they did not even activate their energy shields. That's why they were shocked to death directly. Olivius was merely being pretentious to cover up his little trick. Lear's words hit Zhang Shan, and he immediately shut up. However, after thinking through, it seemed that there could be such an argument. The scene was very frightening, but that did not mean that there were no flaws. We must definitely not see Olivius as a boorish fellow. He was purposefully late, and calling for a heavenly battle should also be something he had calculated. This and that, indeed he has the strength, and killing the steel desolate beast in one move using his pike had an intimidating effect, as it gave him a chance to use his avalanche. If the Ghanaians were a little smarter and did not underestimate their opponent so much, Olivius would have had a headache because with the Overlord mobility, it would be very difficult for it to chase after people. Achilles laughed. But we still have to admit, his strength was indeed top-notch. However, there is no need to worry about him. Don't you guys see how awfully calm the Islanians are? Wang Zheng laughed, but he did not continue with this topic. There was no need to boost other people's morale and dampen one's own spirit. However, Olivius was definitely not just that, it was just that he would still not meet with the solar system team for the time being, and it would not be easy for Arbiter to get through Aslan. Man, the more you think about it, the more it makes sense. Underestimating the enemy is something that can't be controlled. The Ghanaians should have dispersed the moment the battle started, and used their lasers to kite him to death. No matter how exceptionally talented he is at the Overlord, he could only be hung up and beaten to death when forced to fight at range. That or Olivius could have run into the forest like a rabbit. With the functions of the Overlord, it would not be that easy for it to exhibit its skills in the forest, Zhang Shan said while clapping his hands. Lear drank a mouth of soup and said indifferently, the simpler the logic, the easier it would be overlooked. The difficulty of his heavenly battle was below that of Wang Zheng's. Although the scene depicting the Ghanaians being crushed was horrifying, after analyzing things in detail, the Ghanaians had been courting their own deaths. With the bodies of humans, no matter how strong one was with their ability X, after such a move, one would probably also be like an arrow at the end of its flight, Olivius included. The Ghanaians had really given up on such a great opportunity. There was no one to blame. No wonder the fate of aliens was to be governed by mankind. This cleverness was light years apart. Coming to this point, to know your own strength and your enemies was the sure way to victory. There was not so much disparity in strength, and whoever hid deep enough would be the one who would be able to achieve the final victory. So whatever popular name wanted to be the champion, they always die on the path of wanting to show off. But, Lear had actually praised Wang Zheng. What rhythm of things was this?